Today we'll be diverting from our usual intro. Today's episode contains discussions of the Holocaust, antisemitism, and deep hatred. I would understand completely if these topics dissuaded you from listening to this episode. With that being said, before we begin, in 2026, 1 in 5 people worldwide have never heard of the Holocaust. That figure represents 20% of the worldwide population. Half of that doesn't believe it happened at all. The Holocaust, at highest count, claimed the lives of, at highest count, 16 million people, with 6 million of those lives so callously snuffed out being members of the Jewish faith. The atrocities committed by soldiers of the Third Reich have left an indelible scar on the world, and while Auschwitz may have been liberated, the hatred did not stop. It merely showed us what hate looked like at its absolute zenith. I, living as an ethnic Jew in New York, inadvertently put myself in a place of extreme privilege thinking it wouldn't happen to me, and despite what occurred with me as a child. When sharing a Holocaust remembrance post on Facebook, I was attacked online, with my face, legal name, and deeply slanderous allegations levied against me because I am a Jew in support of Israel and I should be scraped from the gene pool. The realization that I became a statistic will never sit right with me, as in 2025, 6,274 anti-Semitic attacks were carried out, rounding this out to nearly 17 attacks per day. This episode is not a sum total history lesson. It is the honoring of memory, its ramifications, and how to rise above them, knowing what could happen if hate rears its ugly head. This is I Am Heathen, and so can you.
You learned enough.
I am heathen.
And so can you.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to I Am Heathen, and so can you. I am your host, Einar, and today's episode's a heavy one. But it's a heavy one that comes with a near sacred weight. The ability to critically understand the responsibility of memory, to understand the ramifications of what can happen if we forget, are permanently etched into my brain. I've spoken about it at length at this point, my battles with my former spiritual identity and my eternal ethnic identity, and just where exactly my understanding of this lay. And it started with a man who started as my paternal grandmother's boyfriend, who would eventually become the paternal grandfather I never knew I had. He was a lover of history, a lover of culture, and arguably one of the smartest men I ever knew. So before I get too choked up, let's get into it. October 15th, 1944, a day that largely goes ignored in the larger scope of what World War II was, but to the Hungarian people, it was a day that reshaped the landscape of a nation. That day signaled the end of Operation Panzerfaust, a mission built to break the backs of the Hungarian people. Admiral Miklos Horthy, under threat of his son, who had been kidnapped by the SS, being murdered, ceded power to Ferenc Szalasi and his Arrow Cross Party, who in turn became more bloodthirsty than the Nazis themselves, with public beatings, humiliations, and executions becoming the order of the day, with the Iron Shoes Memorial along the Danube standing to honor those who lost their lives, with upwards of 440,000 Hungarian Jews being caught in the mechanisms of the German slaughter machine. 8,000 people per day for 56 days, and among them, my grandfather, as a 16-year-old man huddled in a train car, being sent to Poland for what the world would later know as Auschwitz, a literal hell on earth. On the day he arrived, like so many before him that had at that point had his humanity stripped from him, his very existence in a singular brief moment could have ended with just the wave of a hand. My grandfather was permitted to live, if one can call what happened at Auschwitz living, and became one of the Sonderkommando, a group of Jews forced to work extremely close to the machine that turned people into cattle and eventually into meticulously kept records. I've spoken in part of my upbringing living both as an ethnic and spiritual Jew, living in what was a predominantly Irish Catholic neighborhood. Other than my sister, I still to this day recall no other Jewish kids outside of my attending family functions several times a year. My sister and I were alone in our faith and ethnic identity, and initially the thought of getting gifts for 8 days in December opposed to once during Christmas was something I always loved. Even my young love of the material slowly found itself circling the drain when a discussion of religion became a topic in 7th grade history class. When the revelation of my Judaism came out for all to see, I was greeted with a deluge of horrific comments about how Jews were evil, how Jews killed Christ, and so much more horrid things a 13-year-old has no business hearing. This all came to a head when I returned from an office visit during school to have a swastika drawn on my backpack in yellow paint, and the words Die Kike graffitied onto my locker. The school responded as overcrowded babysitting services often do. We didn't see who did it, so we can't do anything about it. The man I refer to as my grandfather dated my paternal grandmother for 20 plus years, cementing himself as family, and I will never forget when I had gotten my first tattoos, I was constantly told to wear long sleeves around him so as not to offend him. My initial thought was, he was old school, not he survived literal hell and came away with a permanent reminder. I will never forget the day he saw the tip of a piece on my wrist and told me that I didn't get mine by choice. He rolled up his sleeve to show me a deeply faded line of numbers that became an almost omnipresent feature of older Jewish men at the time. Little did I realize the depth of those lines of numbers and how it would impact my life. The knowledge of what happened to my grandfather was the culmination of a deep series of records and archival probes and the incredibly generous translation skills of several older German folks. I knew my grandfather was at Birkenau as a member of the Sonderkommando and potentially toiling in close proximity to the likes of Josef Mengele and Fritz Klein. This knowledge came to me much later in my life, and at that point, I had already fully distanced myself from Judaism as a form of spirituality. I mean, I knew I was ethnically Jewish, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. When I began embracing heathenry in 2015, it initially felt as though I left behind nearly everything I grew up believing, and I'd eventually hold no regard for my ancestral religion. Little did I realize the weight of ethnicity would slowly come to play a part in how I view my faith and how I conduct myself. The cultural aspect of hospitality being ingrained into Norse pagan spirituality spoke to not only because I'm a chef, but because in my own family, food and community at family gatherings play a deep role in things. The Hanukkah dinner, the post Seder feast during Passover. These dinners instilled my appreciation of showing love through food. And in turn, something clicked in me when I became a heathen, and the understanding that I cannot run from my ethnicity. More importantly, knowing what I know of my grandfather, it would be a disservice to his memory if I tried. I knew that I had a virulent hatred for Nazis and anti Semites that does extend to Christians and Muslims, but with an especially boiling distaste for those whose hatred exclusively extends to Jews. One of the things I used to do in the early days of my presence on TikTok was educating and teaching about dog whistles and hateful tactics, and I spoke of the protocols of the Elders of Zion and how it was used as a means to justify Jewish hatred for years. This slowly, gradually built up into my understanding of what people of my ethnicity went through. Last year, after posting a Holocaust remembrance on Facebook, a self proclaimed truther decided to say that I am a pedophile Jew who sucks Trump's dick, and I should not do the world a favor and erase myself from the gene pool. This same man went to every video on my social media presence and spouted rhetoric so inflammatory it would have made Heinrich Himmler blush. All right, my friends, let's take a little quick break for a word from the common hearth. Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the common hearth. One of the questions I get asked most often is, who is welcome? The answer is simple. If you're willing to approach others with respect, honesty, and basic human decency, there's a seat for you at our fire. The common hearth was founded on a simple idea that people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different orientations, and even different faiths can sit together without demanding that the other person cease to exist. You don't have to be a Norse pagan. You don't have to be a heathen. You don't have to agree with me on every issue. What you must do is recognize the humanity of the people around you. We have members who are pagan of every stripe, some Jews, some atheists, and eventually people who are just spiritually curious. We have members from different races, cultures, and life experiences. What we don't have is room for hatred. No folkism, no racism, no anti-Semitism, no homophobia, no transphobia, no religious supremacism. No ideology that requires another human being to be viewed as lesser in order for itself to function. The reason is simple. History has shown us where those roads lead. The common hearth exists because community should be stronger than division, because friendship should be stronger than fear, and because the lessons of the past are only valuable if we have the courage to apply them in the present. If that sounds like the kind of community you'd like to be a part of, you can find the Common Hearth online and join us around the fire. And now, back to the episode. Folks are probably asking at this point how my grandfather surviving Auschwitz and me being exposed to anti-Semites as a kid makes me a better pagan. The answer to that question is one to a point that I'll rightfully admit I still ponder to this day. However, I will admit that I feel my spiritual life as a heathen comes from a place of privilege. I am one of a handful of ethnically Jewish pagans I know, and I feel as though I am to a lesser extent removed from the religious trauma that so many pagans I know have felt at one point in their lives. It was that semblance of distance during my life that made experiencing spiritual Judaism take to heathenry and paganism so easily. At least that's what came to mind for me at the start. I began to look at what made Ashkenazi Jewish culture a thing, and despite different time periods and an ocean, Ashkenazi Jews in Viking Age Scandinavia are so philosophically alike, it became a deep source of comfort for me. Cows die, men die, and you will die all the same. I know of one thing that never dies, the reputation of the one who has died. The Havamal teaches us the importance of reputation through memories. It leaves when someone passes, and through deeper study into heathenry, the understanding of memory and reputation became a deeply ingrained concept in my life. And little did I understand that there is a deeply ingrained concept in Jewish culture called zachor. And from everything I could find on that word, it's a more philosophical concept than just a word. It transforms remembrance into an act. It transforms understanding into empathy. I've even had it stated that the Passover Seder isn't a memorial. It's a commemoration. It's a reenactment to remember what the Jews who fled oppression in Egypt went through, to understand its implications, and to understand that we have a responsibility to never have that happen again. Zachor is the type of teacher that doesn't say never forget. It's the type of teacher that says never become the people who forget. And very much like paganism, Judaism is very much a religion of homework. The teacher and the student are honored, and questioning is honored. And while Viking Age Scandinavia wasn't a text-centric culture by any stretch, the allegory, the understanding that Odin sacrificed so much in his never-ending pursuit of wisdom, essentially saying that the ideal elder isn't the strongest axe-toting Drengr, but rather the wisest man in the room. And as such, I have genuinely begun to feel that when Norse paganism answered, it wasn't me turning my back on my ancestral faith. It was the finding of truth and the understanding that while I may no longer be spiritually Jewish, my ethnicity and the culture surrounding it is incredibly worthy of exploration. As I learned more about my grandfather's experiences in Birkenau, I found myself confronted by something unexpected. The values I cherished as a heathen were already present within my Ashkenazi heritage. Both traditions taught me that family exists beyond convenience, that ancestors remain worthy of remembrance, that elders carry wisdom, and that survival itself can become an act of devotion. The language was different, the symbols are different, but the lesson was remarkably similar. We inherit more than blood. We inherit stories, obligations, and the responsibility to carry them forward. If you managed to make it to the end of this episode, I commend you. These stories, however dark they need to be told, lest we're doomed to repeat the unbridled cruelty of the past. I want to take a moment before we leave to say thank you. This is genuinely the hardest script I have ever written and read, and I'm definitely finding it hard to not be choked up. Anyone who hears the call of the old gods, whichever pantheon it may be, whatever previous spiritual life you left, remember why you left and never become the person who forgets. My friends, this is all the time we have for today. Tune in this and all Thursdays at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for all your heathenry-related drive time needs. If you'd like to connect with us outside of Podcastlandia, you can find us at The Common Hearth on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And tonight, we'll be taking a slightly different tact with our closing prayers. Tonight, I honor my heritage and my faith at the same time. If you have a drink, raise it up and repeat after me. Zivkrono livrachom. May the memory of those who so callously taken from us in the name of hate never be forgotten. May their stories continue to be told. May their memories warm the hearts and minds of their families still here on earth. And may we never allow the lessons of their suffering to ever be forgotten. Deir fe, deir frandir, deir shalvarit sama, en ord stier, deir aldraigi, fai mercer godan getur, deir fyr, deir frandir, deir shalvarit sama, Ek veit ein at aldri dair, dom rub dauland. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the spirits, hail the ancestors, and hail the fallen. Keep the fires burning, my friends.